Welcome to the School of Information's 75th anniversary celebration. Please welcome our Director of Development and Alumni Relations and your host for the evening, Shannon Hickson.
Welcome, iSchoolers. Y'all look good from up here. Don't we look beautiful? Round of applause. And y'all don't judge me. I brought my readers just in case, and y'all should see the font size of this script. It's huge, but I'm still got my readers just in case. Good evening, everyone. iSchoolers and friends, and it's my honor tonight to serve as your MC and your hostess with the mostest, whatever you want to call me. 75 years of information excellence brings us together tonight, y'all, and the imagining of the next 75 years of success. Tonight, we're going to laugh, reminisce, enjoy great music, and as well some refreshments, and then we're going to spend a great time together tonight. Also, the room is filled with alumni, friends, students, faculty. Y'all give yourselves a round of applause. Also, I want to acknowledge some scholars and change makers that are in the room, and they will participate tonight in a thoughtful dialogue about the future of information, and it's going to be led by our own Dr. David Lankus, Bowden Professor of Librarianship here at the School of Information. Round of applause again. We also trust tonight that you will leave inspired and motivated to contribute to the future successes of school via your time, your talent, or your treasure, or some combination thereof. Now, speaking of treasure, I have the awesome responsibility of leading our fundraising efforts for the School of Information, and y'all, I'm still on the clock and my boss is in the room. So, student support via scholarships, fellowships, and funding supporting professional development and experiential learning is a top fundraising priority for us, and we could use your help. In honor of our 75th anniversary, our fundraising goal for this anniversary is to raise $75,000 towards student support honoring the past 75 years. You will hear more about that later, but for now, we would like to share a short video to set the occasion. Enjoy.
We live in a world where technology is rapidly evolving and massive quantities of information are generated with unimaginable speed. Since 1948, the School of Information at the University of Texas at Austin has been the home for innovative interdisciplinary scholarship. Our research and teaching centers the human experience in the global information society and the ever-changing technological landscape. Founded as the Graduate School of Library Science, we maintain our rich tradition of leadership in the information age as one of the top-ranked iSchools in the nation. Join us as we celebrate 75 years of information excellence and explore the ways we're pioneering new tools and technologies to harness the power of information and make the world a better and fairer place. At the School of Information, we are changing the future by engaging the present and preserving the past. What starts here changes the world.
Hey. Now, y'all, let's take a stroll down memory lane. After all, it is our 75th birthday. Tonight is a culmination of lots of conversations, looking through lots of images, also reading newspaper clippings and going through primary documents to find some jewels, just different things we want to come together and share. As you can imagine, there was a great deal of ground to cover for 75 years. From our many locations, from the Tower, the Harry Ransom Center, the Sanchez Building, UTA. Hey, who was it, Sanchez? Hey, Sanchez, yay. All right, and as well UTA. And now, come on, UTA. And now the Flan Academic Center. What? And who knows, we might move again, y'all. So, you know what, we may move again, but for now, we're where we are. And we've also had 7 deans in our history: Douglas, McElderry, Willis, Sheldon, Schaefer, Dillon, and now Dean Meyer. And we've had, yeah, come on, that's good. We've also had phenomenal professors such as Professor Emeriti, Dr. David Bergen Gracie, all right, Dr. Lorraine Roy, Dr. Patricia Galloway, Dr. Randolph Baez, Dr. Don Davis, and Dr. Philip Doty, just to name a few. And the jewel in the proverbial crown are our talented students who became successful librarians, archivists, and information professionals around the industries and around the world. Give yourselves a round of applause. Lots of clapping tonight, y'all. Okay, now to continue down our journey, or continue our journey down memory lane, Dr. Calvin Boyer, who remembers Calvin Boyer? Yes. Dr. Boyer was generous enough to write down his memories for us. Not only is he our first PhD graduate of the then Graduate School of Library Science, but he's also an advisory council member currently for the iSchool. He was kind enough to share his memories with us. We wish Calvin were here in person, but y'all, he's in sunny California, so he sends his best. Sit back and enjoy as our own Quinn Stewart narrates some of Dr. Boyer's rich memories.
Notes and personal anecdotes from a much earlier era, 1963-1973. When I arrived in Austin and set foot on the campus, I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. The skies were blue, the stars were bright, Austin and UT offered myriad points of excitement. While each remains, both had changed dramatically. Back then, the tower observation deck was open to anyone who pressed the elevator up button. No security gate, no guards, only a smiling receptionist at the landing to answer questions. The Stephen F. Austin Hotel was the tallest building on South Congress. Barton Springs' tops optional still fascinated many. The ubiquitous university buses had yet to appear. One could commute from married student housing on Lake Austin Boulevard by city bus for only 25 cents. Sometime soon after 1960, the two senior founding members of what was then called the Graduate School of Library Science, Dr. Robert R. Douglas and Dr. Esther Stallman, concluded that if the school's impact were to be broadened to the national scene, it must recruit from outside the state and region. In 1962, when I contacted 4 library schools about their programs, I received 3 catalogs in the mail from Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan, and 1 2-page letter from Dr. Douglas extolling the virtues of the Graduate School of Library Science, or the GSLS, and why I should choose Texas. It was an offer not to be refused. While the first big change of recruiting more vigorously outside the state and region had occurred earlier, the second change likely had a much greater effect on students. That change was the elimination of the thesis or report from the degree requirements, which removed a huge barrier for a timely completion of the degree. I can still picture Douglas in an unguarded moment opening a desk drawer and showing me an accumulation of at least 10 theses or report drafts waiting his attention. That Douglas handed me my report topic as well as hastened its completion was one of the 2 huge boosts that he gave me. The second one was maybe even more momentous. Sometime mid-spring semester, a member of the Texas A&M University Library Administration called to inquire if he knew of a librarian who might make a good candidate for an upcoming vacancy looming there. Since that individual and Douglas knew each other, well, when Douglas mentioned my name, in short order, I became the first UT Library School graduate to work in the Texas A&M Library. Vestiges of the Wild West still persisted then in some quarters. I was hired without an interview. The third big change was the end of an era when Douglas, the school's founding administrator, resigned in 1968 as dean after 20 years. Stanley McElderry, a distinguished academic library administrator in California, became the second dean of the school. Many things of import happened concurrently or soon after McElderry's appointment. The school's administrative offices were moved into the upper reaches of the tower. Courses were added to the curriculum. After McElderry's appointment came appointments for Professors Glenn Harmon, Glenn Sparks, Sam Whitten, and Billy Grace Herring, which nearly doubled the size of the permanent faculty. With these new appointments followed new courses in their specialties. The fourth change, which also altered the course of my life, was the addition of the PhD program to the school's offering. In the fall of 1969, the school opened its PhD program and accepted me as the first of its future candidates for the new doctoral degree. I joined 2 recent MLS candidates whose interests reflected the broadened horizons of the school. Each was, in reality, an information scientist rather than a librarian by professional interest. After 3 years in residence as a doctoral student, I would become the first PhD minted by the school, the degree awarded during the spring 1973 commencement, in which I joined the future President George H.W. Bush, who was the principal speaker for the degree ceremonies. Bush lightning would strike twice, as some years later I would join his son, George W. Bush, on a bale of straw outside the governor's mansion when he and Laura, also a graduate of the GSLS, were hosting a barbecue celebration in honor of the school's 50th anniversary. The fifth of the cataclysmic changes was a move of the school from the main library and tower into the new Harry Ransom Center. It may stretch one's imagination today as one visits HRC to recall that the GSLS was once in possession of the entire second floor of the building. Any one of these 5 changes could be expanded into a major presentation or review. That they were the foundations of the iSchool today is inarguable. What is harder to fathom is how much impact each had on what the iSchool is today. Is it any wonder that I look back on my years in the Graduate School of Library Science with such affection that words escape me?
Now, wasn't that wonderful? And in case y'all didn't spot Calvin, he was the one in the front with that big smile. He was sitting in the front like that. And so to conclude our journey down memory lane, I would like to introduce Professor Emeritus, Dr. Philip Doty.
Welcome to everyone, and thank you for your support and your interest in the iSchool, no matter what your roles in its past, in its present, and in the future. A special shout out, of course, to Cal Boyer, to Quinn Stewart, and to Alex and to Shannon for putting together not just that presentation, but of course, this wonderful occasion that brings us together tonight. I had the pleasure of serving on the faculty of the School of Information for 30 years. I started when I was 9. And speaking of 9, I did 9 years as Associate Dean, serving 3 deans during that time, and 7 years as Graduate Advisor. And I retired in September of 2022. And I want to offer a few historical and other remarks over the next several minutes. Some of them expanding 2 themes in Cal's presentation. One is the growth and reaffirmation of the mission of the school, and secondly is the theme of affection. I will stir in some comments about being and becoming in the context of community. Those of you familiar with Heidegger and other phenomenological thinkers will, of course, recognize the terminology. I begin, however, by considering the School of Information as a professional school. While education for the professions was the foundations of universities globally, starting almost 1,000 years ago, it was really only at the end of the 19th century that professional schools as we know them became autonomous units in the academy. And as you know, professional schools include schools such as those of nursing, law, education, social work, engineering, medicine, and more, including, of course, schools of information studies. What do they all share? 2 essential characteristics. One is adherence to every standard of excellence in the academy, in research, in pedagogy, and more. And the second is equally important. That is commitment to making the world a better place. Unapologetically using the tools of systematic inquiry, free and open scholarship and teaching, and support of public institutions as well as private individuals in pursuit of a more equitable, a more prosperous, and a fairer world. These 2 commitments, the academic and the social, are especially important in a public university, of course. Ordinary citizens and political institutions have paid the freight for almost 150 years. And they've done so putting their faith in our work that it will redound to the betterment of Texas, of the United States, and of the world. That faith is particularly keen in a school such as ours. We might describe our field in any number of ways, and I'll just pick a few of them. One is the importance of communication and information to achieving important social goals. Another is that we lie at the intersection of people, information, and technology. Another, as you heard, we bridge the past, the present, and the future. One way I like thinking about it is we encourage cultural expression. We encourage the curation and stewardship of that cultural expression. And we are committed to the constant creation of individuals in community, all to support important ethical, economic, political, and other forms of the social good. That sort of value system lies at the foundation of iSchools that come from the library and information science tradition, as we do. There are excellent schools elsewhere, for example, the University of Illinois, the University of Washington, University of Pittsburgh, UCLA, shout out to Emilio, of course, and my own alma mater, Syracuse University, that have the same sort of shared vision. While we spring from the LIS tradition, we have not remained only there. Our program offerings include not only a Master of Science in Information Studies, a school librarian certification program, and a PhD in Information Studies, but also an MS in Information Security and Privacy, a recently established BA/BS in Informatics, a 5-year BS MS in Information Studies, a 5-year BS MS in Computer Science, and dual graduate degrees with the UT School of Law, 2 with the LBJ School of Public Affairs, and the Departments of English, Middle Eastern Studies, and Women's and Gender Studies in the College of Liberal Arts. Yay us! Similarly, our faculty has expanded to reflect both the growth of the discipline of information studies and of the vision of the iSchool. For example, we have postdoctoral teaching fellows, more than a dozen affiliate faculty members from various units across the UT campus, and more than 40 part-time lecturers with professional experience ranging from visual design, data visualization, preservation and conservation of materials, usability, digital humanities, and natural language processing. For decades, of course, our curricula have included courses in librarianship, archival practice, museum work, conservation and preservation, computer programming, and information retrieval. We currently have more than 23 full-time faculty members with PhDs in more than 10 disciplines, ranging from information studies, human-centered design and cognitive psychology, to communication, science and technology studies, computer science, information science, and more. 12 of these full-time faculty members come from 7 countries other than the US, and their graduate educations show a similar global spread. As I like to say, we are a tasty international stew. Now, this brief review, brief to me, of course, too long for all of you, I'm sure, shows the face of the school changing while still adhering to our social mission to improve the world by our academic work. Just as our faculty and curricula have changed and expanded, so have the venues where our graduates work. In the general large categories of private for-profit, private not-for-profit, educational and governmental organizations, they practice information architecture, content strategy, data science, healthcare informatics, taxonomy design, UX research, web development, and teaching and research of the first order, as well as the many kinds of archival work, librarianship, and museum practice. For 75 years, we have been changing, growing, becoming stronger, more diverse along any number of dimensions, and more integrated into the university and the social, political, and economic fabric of Texas and the world. We have much to improve upon, however, and many values we cherish are still out of reach. But it has been an exciting and challenging journey, as it should be, and I cannot wait to see what the UT iSchool grows to be. I mentioned the theme of affection at the beginning of my remarks, and I want to conclude on that note. A few weeks ago, I was talking with friends about how deep relationships of mutual commitment show the many faces of love. In particular, we noted one of love's great paradoxes. There are many. This is one in particular we talked about. Those who love us accept us for who we are, strengths, blemishes, fears, and courage, and yet they always call us to be better by their own generosity, forgiveness, patience, and kindness, large and small. Such relations, of course, are not limited to romantic relationships, filial connections, friendships, or the like. They exist in healthy and supportive work environments where we can flourish together to reimagine ourselves and the world. The School of Information has done that for me, and it has done that for our 5,000 graduates, our staff members, our faculty members, and the countless tens and tens of thousands of people our school has touched and served. Time will tell more of the story of the UT iSchool, and it is up to all of us to make that story one we can continue to be proud of. Thank you for your patience, your attention, and for being here. Enjoy the rest of the evening, and I turn the dais back to Shannon.
Now, I would like to acknowledge and celebrate our most recent scholarship and fellowship recipients and thank the generous partners that have provided scholarships and fellowships over the years. Scholarship and fellowship recipients, please stand. Don't be shy. Woo! Wonderful, thank you. Congratulations, you all. I would also like to acknowledge the principals and donors in the room that have ever contributed to the school monetarily, whether it be in establishing an endowment or making an online donation during 40 for 40. Principals and donors, I'm not going to make you stand. If you want to, you can. But everyone, let's give them a round of applause as well. Principals and donors, you all, we are able to accomplish much because of you, and so again, you're greatly appreciated. Earlier, I mentioned the talented scholars and change makers that would be joining us this evening, and it's that time. Our vision for this segment of the program was to look into the future and to address existing challenges, opportunities, and what could be for the next 75 years of the iSchool. Please welcome our moderator for tonight's special panel, Bowden Professor of Librarianship at the School of Information, Dr. David Lankus.
I asked for a hail to the chief, but that was really great. Thanks to They've also given me a script because they know better. Good evening, everyone. My name is, in fact, David Lankus, and I am the inaugural Bowden Professor of Librarianship at the School of Information. I'm looking forward to engaging in a discussion with great questions answered and unanswered. We have done a great job to this point looking at the past and the present of the school, and we thought it would be useful to project a little bit into the future, and I think we've put together a fabulous group to do that. I'm going to introduce them and then ask them to come to the stage. I'd like to introduce my first colleague, Gloria Meraz, Executive Director and Librarian of the Texas State Library and Archives Commission. Stephen Strauss, Co-founder and Managing Director of Kung Fu AI. Our own Angela D.R. Smith, Assistant Professor in the School of Information in Design for Social Impact. And finally, James Green, Chair of the Board for Knowability. If you please join us on the stage. this. All right. New vote for faculty perk. Band to follow you around. We have talked in the 75th anniversary, and we've talked about different mottos and themes that we use on a regular basis within the school. And that one is the changing the future by engaging the present and preserving the past. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each one briefly to comment a little bit, to think about a School of Information Studies, someone who's going to be being prepared for academia, for libraries, being prepared for entrepreneurship, being prepared for the different sectors that you're working about. 75 years might be a little stretch to think towards. So if we could just start within the 5 years, and Gloria, if I could just pick on you for a moment and ask you to think about within, say, the next 5 years, what are the major challenges that you think that we're going to need to be doing research on, or preparing our students for? Basically, how can the iSchool in the next 5 years help organizations such as the Texas State Library and Archives Commission?
Well, first of all, good evening. Can you hear me? Great. All right. And you do look fabulous, I must say. For the next 5 years, there's a lot happening in the world. There's a lot of trust issues with information in the world. This is not new to us. What libraries and information professionals have done for so long and so well is curate, protect, and make available information. That part doesn't change. But I think it is very critical over the next 5 years, in particular, for all of us to be very well honed in the skills necessary to provide the authentication of information, what we used to call in my day in archives a chain of command. But it is having not just the technical skill set to be able to show that we are, in fact, the trustworthy profession that can safeguard that information, but that we are also administratively the ethical profession to be able to guard that information. All of that is to some extent technical work, managerial work, but it's also partnership. I think what I see very important in library education, that we had a good amount when I was in the not too distant past in the library school, was building partnerships. And I'm delighted that we have wonderful people from the field, James and Stephen and the wonderful Angelo. You know, we're all building all these great partnerships and looking at different areas, but I think that's going to be really critical. We have always talked about the library field, the information field, as being very interdisciplinary. And wow, I had no idea how many programs that the iSchool has going on right now, but we need more of that. There is one essential truth that I have said to anybody in this field, is if you get a degree in information studies, you will be prepared for anything. Trust me, that skill set will serve you well in any field. But truly, I think it is very incumbent upon all of us in the profession, you coming into the profession, those of you teaching the profession, to really have an army of individuals who are not just skilled in sharing information and willing to forge those partnerships, but who are advocating for it in the front edge of it.
Stephen, I hear trust, I hear ethics, I hear agility, and I think AI. Certainly working in that area, but entrepreneurship has always been thinking about how to be agile, moving into different industries, how responsive. What are some of the issues you think that the school needs to be thinking about, taking on, teaching, and researching in the next 5 years?
It's a great question. Let me start by putting a little historical context. I want to make a connection between this year, 75th year, and what I think people are going to look back at this year and say this was a seminal year as it relates to AI. So just a little bit of background, I started an AI firm 6 years ago. I actually thought this moment would come sooner than 6 years, but it's here now. But I think the historical analogy to this year is 1998. So at the start of 1998, I think you could credibly have a discussion about whether the internet was something and was it here to stay, or were we going to rely on fax machines for a long time? By the end of the year, that was a ludicrous debate. Now at the beginning of this year, I don't think anyone was thinking that this was the year that people would recognize that we are in the age of AI. But I think even in October, we're not even at the end of the year, I think it's obvious that something very disruptive is happening. Now, you asked about the next 5 years. imagine, for those of you who are old enough, trying to imagine what the next 5 years from 1998 were going to look like, let alone 10 or 15. Mark Zuckerberg, as an example, was probably still in middle school. I'm not exactly sure at that point. So, some of the people who are going to create some of the, big disruptive changes in that, based on that technology, weren't even, in the professional sector. So I think it's very difficult to say what is going to happen over the next, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. But it's very obvious to me that artificial intelligence will infuse every aspect of every one of our organizations, public, private, et cetera. Just like today, no one says, I'm an internet company, right? Internet is just part of how we do everything. And I think 20 years from now, that will be the same. So how do you prepare, ourselves, how do we prepare our students for this future? I think this school, as you said, if you have a degree from here, you're prepared for anything. I think the world needs, people who are, interdisciplinary. I have a liberal arts background. I think that kind of foundation, just the how do you think, how do you, make good decisions, all those kinds of basic skills are going to be more important than ever, in addition to the technical skills on top of that. I think we have to be able to, keep our humanity and guide these machines, towards supporting us as opposed to the opposite. And so I think it's incumbent on all of us to help create the world we want to live in for ourselves and for our kids. And I think that, as it relates to information, I think that especially means being cognizant of the information we're using to train these systems. The world is inherently biased. Humans are biased. And so the data that we will feed the data we'll feed into, machine learning models have to be worked on by a diversity of people to make sure that we are understanding of what kind of biases might be built in there and do our best to unbias them. And then also look out for not only first order implications of what we build, but second and third to make sure that we are not negatively impacting the world. So I will stop there, but thank you.
Dr. Smith, I know you probably don't remember back to 1986. As a comment about my age, don't worry. You do, I'm sorry.
I laugh because, one, in September, kid you not, someone asked me to send them a fax, and I was like, it's 2023, are we still sending faxes? I can easily just scan it and send it as an email. But then I also laugh because I thought about Y2K and the significance and pivotal moment that was for, many people's lives, but that's probably lost upon a few. But to your question, David, about what does the future of the iSchool kind of look like in 5 years, I really think it's interesting, especially with the launching of the undergrad, right? Typically that's a 4-year program. So in 5 years, even less than that, we will have graduated, right? A class that has applied to UT as an undergrad. So what I really imagine for them and what I really hope for them is that we're instilling conscientious thinkers. Thinkers that are, when I think of like the class that I'm teaching this semester, designed for social impact, that they're thinking of the intended, but also the unintended consequences that are happening with technology and the things that we're making, but also the data, the information that we're putting out into the world. A big part of this course as well is we're exploring business models, right? So we're exploring existing platforms, we're exploring different businesses like the Facebooks, the Googles, the Apples, and how they're constructing basically the work that they do. We're exploring how we can implore ethics into that. So I'm really excited and hopeful for the future generation, and that they will start to be able to think critically, but also understanding, like, while we're often driven by capitalism, right, that we're able to kind of still interject our moral and ethical values into things. So that's what I'm really hopeful for in the next 5 years, especially as we graduate this class, is that we're able to put individuals and places, whether it's policy, whether it's government, whether it's these tech companies, because as we all know, Austin is becoming Silicon Hills, as they call it so lovingly, but that we're putting them in these places and that they're able to make a difference, and that they're able to make a voices. I was really challenged with one of my students. She asked me, she's like, but when you're at one of the alphabet companies, right, and you're pushed by your manager to kind of like drive this product out, but otherwise, that the values of the tool are different, that they'll have negative impact. What do you do? And I'm like, well, you can voice it, and I definitely encourage you to voice it, but that's also the internal challenge that we have with technology. Technology is complex, it's nuanced, right? It's not all good, it's not all bad, but being able to critique it, being able to articulate it, being able to show through evidence the impacts and understanding the populations that we're talking about are all critical skills that I hope for our undergraduates. So those are the things that I really hope for, is that we can get these students, these individuals into places where they can truly make impact and really push against what is the normative and push against what is the standard, because that's when we will be able to lessen and mitigate the biases that we see today.
James, I'm thinking back to the facts to the internet. I'm thinking about AI disruption. In a lot of technological disruption, there is a great advance of capabilities, but there's also tends to be a lag on making sure that those are equally provided and equally accessible. Same question about the next 5 years, and don't want to, but if I could just start you on the concept of how do we ensure in the next 5 years, through research, through how we teach and advocacy, that this is a beneficial technology across the board?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important question. As I was listening to everybody talk about ethics and morality of technology, it really did kind of ring true with me. I work in accessibility, so working to make sure technology is accessible to people with disabilities, right? There is that digital divide. It's not even just disabilities. It's socioeconomic, it's location-based. Like, how do you have access to technology? And so not only do we have to look at the technologies that we're building and whether or not they are being used in ethical ways, but we're also having to look at, are we making sure that these technologies are available to everyone, or are they being reserved for a special subset of people? And so I think it's really important in terms of accessibility that we look at, when we teach students in the school, what exactly are they learning? Are they learning how to use the technologies, how to go out and do that, how to work in the workplace? Or are they also learning about the humanity behind it, empathy for the people who actually be using it? And are they learning, kind of to your point, to be able to speak up if something's going to be wrong, right? Are they learning the skills they need and the just kind of inherent understanding that it's part of their job? And so that's something we see right now. The internet, not very accessible, right? It's not. And I think one of the reasons for that is because it's not taught enough in schools. And so when people come out of school, they go into the workplace, they probably aren't told to do accessibility, because you can see that on the internet right now. But when they are, they're like, what? I already have a full job. My boss is already, to your other point, my boss is already telling me to do all this stuff, and now you have this whole extra thing that I have to do. Like, I want them to come out of school just knowing that accessibility and those types of responsibilities are part of your job, and then you're going to be able to make sure you're including everyone as you do your job from day one. It's not considered an extra thing; it's the thing you do.
I'm interested, and shout out to Dr. Huff on the work he does in this area. But I want to think about something that each of you had mentioned, which is the idea of, in the situations we're in, where we're building trust, where we're seeking these different values, where we are confronted with hard questions, where we have to make these decisions of resources. If we go back 75 years, a library school was almost always begun in a library. It was sort of started almost as an apprenticeship program, and then quickly researched about it. Once again, thank you, Dr. Doty, for talking about the history and the evolution into professional programs. What's interesting now, though, is we're in a beautiful public library, which is less than a mile away from the campus. Can you think about, as we move forward to get these different areas, to get what we want these students to learn, how does that interaction between government and the academia, between private business and startup and nonprofits and academia out into the rest of the community, How do you see that evolving in the next 5 years? Are we still talking breaking down ivory towers, but is there something, more that's going to change education itself in how we do some of these things? Yes.
I'm a big proponent of, escaping the ivory tower and getting into the community to do work. And I actually jokingly made a comment to Dr. Huff earlier in the evening that clearly the library is where all the culture is. I made comments about, I think over the summer, the Austin Public Library had a bunch of events that, welcome and celebrated the 50th anniversary of hip hop. I also but referenced the main library on UT's campus, the Perry Castaneda. Thank you. That had a whole month-long event on Afrofuturism, right? So when I think of the work of the library, I think of it really as a meeting of the minds on diverse topics in a lot of ways. Ways that, one, expose us to researchers, communities, as well as, practitioners, right, who are interested in doing this work, but also ways and avenues in which we can meet other people. So ways in which I can meet, the Stevens of the world, I already forgot, James? Perfect. The Jameses of the world, that are doing this work, and how we can, find collaborations to kind of continue to extend this work outside of just the academic community that I'm currently instilled in, right? Because they're in different communities. And I think there's ways in which we think about often, extending our work outside of these scholarly articles that I'm sure all of you are so interested in reading, right? Like, all those pages, but finding more accessible ways for this research. And I think that is going to be through the people who are in these spaces of AI, in these spaces of librarianship, and in these spaces of policy and whatever else that might look like. So I see libraries really as that space of which, these nexus and these nodes of communication and connection.
I want to build on that because I think that's an excellent point. For as long as I can remember, the library proper has always said, we serve our community. What our community needs is what we should be doing. And I think that's been right. But to your question about how do we start bringing all the players together, and I hate this word when other people use it, I like it when I use it, intentionality. I mean, there really has to be an intentionality in walking the walk of, it's not just mirroring our own local community, it's mirroring the needs of the whole community, the state. And to your point about the partners, I mean, it is requiring, I know a simple example, in grants, we can require libraries to have partnerships, and we do. We need a lot more of that. We need to build into our administrative structures the requirement and expectation that it's not just having a few surveys and determining what's needed out there. It's being actively part of the community, and the community is the business. It's all of the other players. I think we're going in that direction, but we haven't done it nearly enough. And the problems, especially technology problems that are so broad-based, we cannot solve a broadband issue. And I know I've got staff here and we're working on these things without talking to nonprofits who are already in the field. We cannot solve that problem without talking to industry. I mean, these issues are so big that we do need those partnerships, but unless we buy the programs we put out there, the administrative structures that we create, we're not going to get to it.
Stephen, I'm thinking, once again, we've talked now about different ways of reaching the community, but I'm also thinking about how the community can come into academia. You're an entrepreneur. Did you learn that in school? All right, how do we begin to instill that kind of spirit into our students? Is it getting them out of the classroom? Is it the old internship? Is there a new form of that? How do we really take the innovation that's going out in these different community sectors and bring it into the work that's happening at the iSchool?
I did not study entrepreneurship. I was a poli-sci major. I did start a club in college, and I then learned a skill during that club, and I actually started my first company based on that skill. I have no idea why I decided to be an entrepreneur, but it happened. But a very small percentage of the population ends up being entrepreneurs. But I do think that entrepreneurial thinking is a skill that is something that everyone should have. It's like, how do you get stuff done when you don't have resources, when you don't know the answer? I mean, that's some of the basic concepts of what entrepreneurship is. So I think you used the word intentionality. You actually stole the word I was going to use, but I was. But you said you don't like it when other people don't use it. But I was actually going to commend UT Good Systems, which I've had some intersection with, and Ken Fleischman's here. They actually didn't use the word intentionality. They used mandate. So that's even stronger. But my understanding of the mandate was that it had to be cross-disciplinary. So lots of different schools at UT are part of UT Good Systems and the other grand challenges. But then they also had a mandate, or have a mandate, to connect into other parts of the community, in particular, the business community. And so I think that's a really good model for, these connections. And it's been a pleasure to work with Tina Lassiter, who's a PhD student around AI and ethics and good systems. And it's a topic that's very important to me and our company, but it's obviously one that's very important to the whole, not only the community, the schools community, but the whole world. So,
James, if I could come to you for a moment, because Stephen raises the question about interdisciplinarity, and iSchools are classically diverse in terms of, mainly in terms of backgrounds, of academic backgrounds. We could do better in many other areas. But I'm thinking, how do you, as a nonprofit trying to make a really big impact, how do you work in that kind of interdisciplinary environment? Is that a necessity in the work you do?
Yeah. Again, I work with this nonprofit in my day job. I actually work in industry and lead accessibility for a bank, and so there is that connection there, and you see it all the time. Knowbility spends a lot of time. Their mission, again, to make the web more accessible. A lot of that is through training. A lot of that is through working with corporations and governments, and they do consulting and help them get the skills to make their products better. And so at kind of the core of what they're doing is bringing a diverse group of people together to give them the skills so that they can go out and make a difference. And so, again, I think it's incredibly important that you maintain that ability to connect. When you first mentioned your question, I thought of silos, and then I thought, well, people generally like to stay in their silos. And there's a small subset of people who don't, the ones who make connections. And so I think what the school can do over the next 75 years, again, is to really focus on helping students be kind of self-aware about our tendency to kind of stay in our own little boxes and to build those connections, because those connections are really where we make a difference, whether it be in accessibility or any of the things we're talking about.
So we talk a lot about students and education, and that's essential. But one of the things that is really particular about a research university is that the faculty are bringing students up to speed of the discoveries they're making. In other words, we're not simply saying what we already know, but we're inviting them to help us develop new. What research do you need out of the information school to help you in your day job or in your chairmanship?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm particularly interested in more research on people with disabilities, obviously. There isn't a lot of that. And so we've actually had conversations. I've been talking to Shannon about that. How can we work with the iSchool, and this is through Knowbility and also through my corporate job, to get more of that information? Because again, if you're going to be connecting with other groups, if you're going to be building things for people, right, and you don't understand those people because they're not in your little box, the only way you can do that is to get to know them. And so you do that through research, and you do that again through instilling curiosity in the students. But it's incredibly important that the research is done. Otherwise, we're just going to be taking our best guess at making things for people. And design can't really work that way.
Stephen, if I could put you a little bit more on the spot, which is, what research do you need to move forward, and in what form do you need that research? We've heard before about the pages and pages that we produce on a regular basis. Do you need pages and pages? What do you need?
It's a good question. We have this. I'm not sure if we're pioneering it, but we have this category of people. We only have a few people, but we call them business scientists. So it's there's people generally understand what data scientists are, but these are people who have the skills necessary to navigate an organization, really understand the business, and then create hypotheses around what might be causal, what might be correlation, be able to develop return on investment, criteria, success metrics, et cetera. It's quite an interdisciplinary concept. And so I don't know that I'm answering your question exactly, but I do think that people who can marry the technical skills and the practical skills along with the EQ necessary to be able to put it all together is maybe the distillation of what this role is and how it might relate to the kinds of programs that you all are thinking about in the future.
Lori, I'm going to ask you the same question with absolutely no self-interest in mind. Less on what the research is. Very interested in that. But I'm very interested in what form do you need it in? How do we get an actionable connection from the ivory tower into the trenches, as it were?
And I've been thinking about that since you asked the question because I knew it was coming my way. In our very specific environment, which I think actually is very applicable to large organizations, we are one. Of course, produce talented professionals who have a lot of skill set. But the add-on is to have professionals coming in who are able to translate the work from I am serving this individual or I am achieving this task to very broad constituencies. I need people who can come in and not just solve the immediate problem we have, but who can solve problems for the other agencies, for the other communities that we serve. We have the skill set, we just don't have the mindset, the entrepreneurial mind to do that. I think the school has evolved greatly since I was here. I think there's a lot more of it, but we need exponentially more. And this is has been a constant refrain in the profession. We don't do nearly as good of a job selling ourselves as we need to. We have all heard this. It's very difficult. But the antidote to that is to have the skill set, that the training that expects us not just to be able to serve the constituent that we're tasked to serve. We can do that. We should do that. But let's extrapolate that. How do we turn all of this, and I'll use the crass word, product, into something that will serve what the Workforce Commission needs, what the community in Muleshoe needs. I mean, this is how we create that interdisciplinary approach, which is give me professionals who know that it's not just what they need to do today. Think about the problem, the big problem that we need to solve for someone else.
Angela, I'm going to give you the last question. And I have to be careful because her office is next to mine, and she can turn her music up at any time. We've heard a lot about engaging the community. We've talked a lot about positive sides of the next 5 years. We've talked about if we can generate interdisciplinarity, if we can get this kind of connection in. That's hard work. And I know that you in particular, your research is very much in the community and of the community. How are you going to stay, and how are we all going to stay energized the next 5 years when there are really big challenges in front of us? What motivates you, and what kind of motivation should we be looking for as a school?
Wow, what motivation should we be looking for as a school? Wow, I think that's difficult, right? I think there's a lot of intrinsic motivation upon each of us. I think a lot of times when we talk about research, especially among academics, it's really me search, right? There's that personal tie and that personal investment to what you're doing, whether it's someone you know, someone you've interacted with, someone you've been inspired by. But I think as an iSchool, I think what was really interesting about us is that we were always interested in like the public interest of technology, right? You know, we were always interested in the good systems of, well, how can we take what we're doing and impact society there? So I think it's really kind of taking that motivation, but thinking more so, how can we make the institutional changes to really solidify and make movements there? As you all know, I would say the individual doing the work is a very arduous and strenuous process, but I think where we can find more support, right, is thinking through kind of what stakes can we put in the department? What stakes can we put in the university that can funnel this work to make it more longitudinal, that can make it more long-lasting and make it more impactful? Like, I think of all of the students who stood up because they had scholarships, right? And I think of what more can we do in that regard? I think of how can we bring students that, look like other people's? How can we bring other faculty that look like others? How can we continue to diversify our research? And how can we continue to just diversify our efforts in impacting those, not only with accessibility, not only with those who are, BIPOC individuals, but queer individuals, all of those. Like, we should be looking at more. When I think of the matrix, today was a class day, so when I start to get into the terms, I'm so sorry. But when I think of like the matrices of domination and oppression, and I think of all the intersectional identities that lie there, how can we impact all of those individuals? How can we think more broader to reflect in the faculty, in the staff, but also the students as well? And how can we take that out into the community and have those efforts there and recognized and acknowledged and impacted? So I don't know if that answers your question.
It was a good one regardless.
Okay.
So this is at what point I go back to the script, but it turns out not bad. Watch this. What a thought-provoking discussion. Thank you for your insights, and we look forward to engaging further as we embark on the next 75 years of information excellence. But this one is heartfelt. Please do join me in a round of applause for our great panel. Thank you so much.
And now, the Dean of the School of Information, Mary R. Boivy Chair and Louis T. Ewell Regents Professor, Dean Eric T. Meyer.
So, good evening, everyone. I'm the last person on the agenda, I believe. I've really enjoyed this evening. I hope you have as well. It's been a really great effort, and I really wanted to particularly call out Shannon and her whole team that put this event together. It's been such a great effort. So it's really been my pleasure to see all of you this evening, to meet some of you for the first time, to reunite with others. I've had lots of great conversations this evening. So I've been at the school for, this is my 6th year here as dean, and I've really been inspired by the rich history of information excellence that we've seen tonight, and honored for the little role I've played over the last 5 years to contribute to the impact now and into the future. So during my time as dean, the iSchool and the world at large has changed dramatically. We experienced the global pandemic, obviously. It's highlighted the importance of our field to research. During the difficult time of the pandemic, we saw the power of technology to connect people to each other, to information, but we also witnessed the ill effects of information and technology misuse that caused increased harm during a crisis situation, some of which was alluded to during our panel this evening. Our faculty's research into topics like user health information seeking behavior, COVID data infrastructure projects, mis- and disinformation campaigns, and how the inequitable access to information and technology affected vulnerable and marginalized communities helped policymakers and other organizations to better understand the complexity of these problems and to inform more effective solutions for the public good. Today, other topics that we heard about this evening, like artificial intelligence, are at the forefront of our social discourse. And once again, our faculty experts, many of whom are in this room, along with our graduate students and our postdoctoral scholars, are investigating the human impact of these new and emerging technologies. Research labs here at the iSchool are studying the effects of virtual and augmented reality on children, the ethical implications of using AI to augment human decision-making, while also reducing unintended harm to users, and how to leverage the power of AI to improve health outcomes in patient care, how libraries are using emerging technologies like AI to enhance services for their patrons and to improve digital literacy within communities, and many other contexts exploring the uses of information and technology to make the world a better and a fairer place, a theme that we've heard a number of times this evening, and I think is important to underscore because it's been at the heart of our school for such a long time, the notion that information isn't neutral, that we can use it to make the world better and fair, and that's part of our imperative. So our graduate programs, some of which many of you have graduated from who are here this evening, have been at the heart of the school since 1948. In recent years, we've seen skyrocketing applications to our master's and our doctoral programs as students recognize the demand for information professionals in the modern world. And I'll say this is at a time when many fields are seeing declining numbers of students and declining enrollments. We've seen nothing but more and more demand for all of our programs, without exception. And I think that really speaks to the currency of our field in the modern world. The American Library Association reaccredited our Master's in Information Studies degree program last year, which lasts until 2029. And the ALA's Committee on Accreditation praised the excellent quality of the education our master's students received in their report back to us. Our doctoral program has grown in size and impact as more PhD students are contributing to the important research and teaching here at the school. The school library certificate program has been revitalized with a new curriculum designed to train school librarians who will become leaders in their field and create modern library programs that prepare Texas public school children to effectively identify, evaluate, and use information to become innovative creators of new knowledge. As you've heard a couple of times tonight, in 2021, the iSchool entered a new chapter in our history with the launch of our undergraduate informatics program. This is momentous. We are the first, as far as I'm aware, and nobody's corrected me when I've said this, we're the first school at the University of Texas to go from being graduate only to adding an undergraduate program and being a full range offering undergraduate through doctoral education. It's really a tremendous sign of success for all of our faculty. I do want to call out Ken Fleischman, who's the director of our undergraduate program. He played a key role in making sure all this happened. And we've seen such success. There's huge demand for the program, far more than we can meet. And the students are so much fun to talk to. They're so intelligent. They're the cream of the crop. We had an event just the other evening that was mingling with a number of the students. And they're just such a delight to meet and to learn about their aspirations and to learn how they're going to change the world. So as you know, the iSchool offered an undergraduate minor in addition to our graduate programs for many years. But this growth with a major in informatics here in the school and the hundreds of new undergraduate students that we're welcoming into our classrooms really has changed the feel of the school in a positive way. Really great new energy. So these new informatics majors study 6 concentration options that align with our school's primary goals and our primary values: human-centered data science, user experience design, social justice informatics, health informatics, cultural heritage informatics, and social informatics. It prepares the students with skills that are in demand for high-tech careers where they're going to be able to design more user-centered information technologies, leverage data to benefit society and serve the public interest, and design partnerships between humans and AI-based technologies that respect human rights and values and create a more just and equitable society. It's been remarkable to be witness to the changes that our school's undergone in these few years and played the role that I've been able to play in making that happen. Coming out of the pandemic, the arrival of our first undergraduate students brought a fresh new energy to our classrooms and common spaces, which include a new location on the main campus to accommodate our growing school. And if you haven't been there, it's a great space. I encourage you to visit it. Our undergrads are a vibrant addition to our scholarly community. They're highly engaged and passionate. At our spring graduation ceremony last May, the first 18 students became the first in our school's history to be awarded a bachelor's degree in informatics. They were students who were internal transfers that started the program partway through their degree, and so they were our first small graduating class. In 2025, we'll celebrate the first full class of students who started their programs here as freshmen and went all the way through 4 years of the school. I'll tell you though, at the graduation, I get to stand up there on the stage in the stadium, and I told the students in advance that I wanted to hear them. And those 18 students, along with our master's students, made a lot of noise in that stadium, far more than some of the bigger colleges and schools. So they did a great job, and they'll do even more this year. Speaking of graduation, at last year's ceremony, the iSchool acknowledged another first in our school's history and in UT's history. So we officially awarded Ada Collins Anderson, who was the first black student to enroll in what was then the Graduate School of Library Science, with a Master of Science in Information Studies degree, posthumously awarded in recognition of her academic accomplishments and acknowledgement of the racial barriers that prevented Mrs. Anderson from obtaining her degree in 1953. Despite completing all the required coursework for the degree, Mrs. Anderson was denied placement for a mandatory field internship in the Austin area because of racial segregation practices in effect at the time. The only placement that the school was able to get her was in Houston. She had 3 small children here in Austin. There wasn't a way for her to take up that internship. Far too late, and sadly after she'd passed away, we were able to at least acknowledge that injustice and to get a degree award, and a full degree, not an honorary degree, a full degree in recognition of the work she did. We were honored that Mrs. Anderson's family attended our graduation convocation and received the degree that she should have been given decades ago. We're also pleased to announce that the student lounge in our iSchool West Mall location has been officially approved by the University of Texas System to be named the Ada Collins Anderson Memorial Student Lounge. This honors this remarkable iSchool alumna who became a community leader, a philanthropist, who was a passionate advocate for youth education and the arts. This newly renamed student gathering space for learning, collaboration, inspiration, and creativity, we're adding some artwork in the coming months, and it's going to be unveiled in 2024 to really celebrate her life and her contributions to the whole community here in Austin. Looking back over the past several years and reminiscing on the previous decades as we've done this evening, our schools overcome challenges. We've adapted in an ever-changing world of information to become one of the top-ranked high schools in the country. What starts here does change the world. We're changing the future by engaging the present and preserving the past. Our research and teaching changes the ways we interact with information and technology, changes how information can make the world a better and a fairer place, and changes the ways we protect and preserve our collective memory. I can only imagine what the next 75 years of innovation and interdisciplinary scholarship that emerges from this institution looks like. I sadly won't be here in 75 years, I don't think, unless there's some major new technological advances in lifespan. But I'm confident that however information and technology involve in the future, our school will maintain an unwavering commitment to information excellence like we're celebrating here today. And hopefully, those people will be looking back at the people who are here in this room and thanking us for the contributions, the small role we had in making that happen. So, is there a slide that's popping up behind me at this point? Earlier, Shannon mentioned our fundraising priorities for this year. Tonight, in honor of 75 years of information excellence, we are launching our 75 for 75 campaign to raise funds to support our students, some of whom you saw here tonight. Your contributions, if you're so inclined and able to make it to our fundraising goal of $75,000, will directly impact generations of information professionals for years to come. The funds will contribute to student scholarships and fellowships, as well as other financial support for students to pursue professional opportunities, to pursue professional development, experimental learning opportunities, attend conferences, and more. Behind me, yes, there is a QR code. If you'd like to give to the campaign now, go ahead and do so. Many iSchools have already begun to contribute. We've already started to raise money on this campaign, including the first $1,000. We've also invited our alumni and friends to support our students' education and professional development by volunteering as a student member, speaking on an industry panel, serving as a mock interviewer, sponsoring an internship or a capstone project. Just get in touch with us, and we'll make things happen because our students want to have those opportunities to connect with you if you're out in the community and in industry or in the public sector. Your participation in these activities greatly enhances student learning by providing the real-world insight to the concepts that they're learning in the classroom. We've heard feedback from volunteers about how rewarding it is to work with students who are going to become their future colleagues in the information profession and how valuable their fresh perspectives were in solving problems during internships or during their capstone experience. So just get in touch with our staff and we'll help you align with those student goals. So I'd like to wrap up by thanking you for your continued support, your contributions to the profession now and into the future. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I can't say how much I've enjoyed this evening. I've enjoyed talking with people. I've enjoyed the energy here in the room. I've enjoyed this beautiful facility here at the Austin Public Library. I've enjoyed the wonderful music from our guests. And I really want to thank everybody here. So give everybody here yourselves a round of applause for being here tonight and making such a great event.